My sister left her baby on my doorstep and vanished, and my parents looked at me and said, "She's your burden now." I raised that child alone for 10 years while they stayed silent. Then suddenly they came back, accusing me and dragging me to court to take her away. They thought they had the upper hand, until I calmly handed the judge a sealed folder. His expression changed instantly, and the room fell silent when he asked, "Do they even know what you have?" I just nodded, because in the next moment, everything they believed was about to fall apart. 10 years ago, my sister Amanda left her 3-month-old baby on my doorstep like a piece of unwanted luggage and vanished into the rainy night. My parents responded with a coldness that still haunts me, declaring that the child was my burden now and refusing to help. I stepped into the vacuum she left behind, raising my niece Lily as my own and building a life out of the wreckage of her abandonment. Now, Amanda has returned with my parents at her side, suing me for custody and claiming I intentionally kept them apart. Today in court, I handed the judge a sealed folder that turned the entire room silent. As he looked at the contents, he asked me if they even knew what I had. The path that led to this courtroom began on a rainy Tuesday in October. Back then, I was a pediatric nurse at Memorial Hospital, newly promoted and planning a future with my boyfriend, Mark. I had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift and was settling in for the night when the doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m. On my welcome mat sat a car seat shielded by a thin, wet blanket. Beneath it was a tiny girl with rosy cheeks and a wisp of dark hair that looked exactly like my sister's. Tucked into the side was a note in handwriting I recognized instantly. "Her name is Lily. I cannot do this. Take care of her. I am sorry." 7 words were all it took to shift my entire existence. Amanda was gone, her phone going straight to voicemail, leaving me standing in my living room with a sleeping infant and shaking hands. My first call was to my parents, but their reaction was a punch to the gut. My mother told me coldly that Amanda had made her choice to run away and that it was typical behavior. When I panicked, telling them I knew nothing about infants, my father was firm. He told me they were done cleaning up after Amanda and that they were too old to be parents again. They hung up, refusing to even come over. I was entirely alone. Even Mark, the man I thought I would marry, turned his back on the situation. He called it insane and told me to contact social services, refusing to even go to the store for formula and diapers. He told me it wasn't our problem and that he wouldn't get pulled into my sister's drama. That night, I drove to a 24-hour supermarket in my work scrubs, frantically Googling how to care for a 3-month-old while a kind clerk helped me pick out the essentials. The first few weeks were a blur of exhaustion and emergency family leave. I filed a police report, but the officers told me that since she left the baby with a family member and left a note, no crime had been committed. I hired a lawyer to start the long, expensive process of temporary guardianship. Amidst the fury I felt toward Amanda, a fierce protective love began to grow for Lily. I made her a bed in a dresser drawer that first night and whispered a promise to her as I fed her in the dark. I didn't know where her mother was, but she was safe with me. To accommodate Lily, I had to dismantle the life I had planned. I moved to a 2-bedroom apartment that stretched my budget to the limit and reduced my hours at the hospital, which effectively stalled my career advancement. Mark eventually left me, saying he hadn't signed up to date a single mother and suggesting that foster care would have been better for everyone. Losing him was painful, but it paled in comparison to the realization that I was the only person standing between Lily and a system that didn't know her name. My parents remained distant and critical during that first year. My mother would visit only to judge the clutter in my apartment or tell me I was letting the baby cry too much. My father wouldn't even touch her, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed, asking only if I had heard from Amanda. They had essentially written off both of their daughters. However, I found a new family in my coworkers and my neighbor, Mrs. Santiago, who became the grandmother Lily deserved. When Lily was 3 months old, I spent what little money I had on a private investigator. He traced Amanda to San Diego, where she had briefly worked at a restaurant before the trail went cold. It broke my heart to know she was alive and simply choosing not to check on her daughter. Despite that, Lily thrived. Her first word was Nana, her name for me. We celebrated her first birthday with a small, loving circle of friends while my parents stayed away, claiming they had other plans. As I tucked her in that night, I realized I could no longer imagine a world without her. 5 years passed, and our lives found a beautiful, steady rhythm. I took a job as a school nurse to have more time with her, and our home became a gallery of her artwork. Lily grew into a curious and resilient child, though she often asked about her mommy. I always told her the truth in a way she could understand, that her mother wasn't ready to be a mommy, but she made sure Lily came to me because she knew I would love her. We called ourselves a heart family, a term Lily embraced with pride. My parents still visited occasionally, but they remained cold. My mother would bring inappropriate gifts, like tutus for a girl who loved dinosaurs, and complain that she wasn't in ballet. My father never played with her, his anger toward Amanda having turned into a general bitterness toward all of us. Lily, being sensitive, would always grow quiet and dim her light whenever they were around. I worked 2 jobs, including telehealth nursing at night, just to build a college fund for her. We took our first vacation to Disney World when she was 6, and seeing her face light up made every sacrifice worth it. I kept a box under my bed filled with unsent letters to Amanda, documenting every milestone Lily reached, just in case she ever came back. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday when Lily was 9 years old, the phone rang. It was an unknown number, but a familiar voice. Amanda was back in town and wanted to meet. When I saw her at a cafe the next day, she looked nothing like the girl who had vanished. She was polished, sober for 7 years, and married to a man named Thomas. She told me a story of hitting rock bottom, going through rehab, and getting a degree in graphic design. She seemed stable and successful, but as she spoke, the reality of what she wanted began to set in. She wasn't just there to say hello, she was there to claim the life I had built. The discovery that Amanda's sobriety was a path toward redemption was a hard pill to swallow, especially when she admitted the depth of her past failures. She confessed to me in that quiet cafe that she had been using drugs heavily during her pregnancy, terrified that Lily would be born with health problems because of her choices. When Lily appeared healthy at birth, Amanda thought she could manage, but postpartum depression hit her like a tidal wave, driving her back into the arms of her addiction. The night she left Lily on my doorstep, she had been high for days and was terrified she would eventually hurt the baby. Leaving her with me was the only selfless act she had performed in years. As we sat there, I showed her a decade of life she had missed through the glowing screen of my phone. I swiped through photos of Lily's first wobbly steps, her gap-toothed grin on the first day of kindergarten, messy birthday parties, and the quiet joy of Christmas mornings. Amanda wept openly, her sophisticated exterior cracking as she looked at the beautiful, happy 10-year-old girl she didn't know. She told me I had done an amazing job, and for a moment, my old anger softened into a cautious hope. Perhaps, I thought, Lily could finally have a relationship with her birth mother. After consulting with a child psychologist, I arranged their first meeting at a children's museum, a place where Lily felt safe. I explained to Lily that my sister had been very sick when she was a baby but was better now and wanted to meet her. When the moment arrived, Lily was uncharacteristically shy, anchoring herself to my hand. Amanda approached with a trembling smile, telling Lily she had looked forward to this for a long time. Lily's response was a knife to Amanda's heart. She acknowledged Amanda was my sister and her birth mother, but stated firmly that I was her real mom because I was the one who took care of her, loved her, and made her soup when she was sick. Amanda took it gracefully, through tears, agreeing that Lily was lucky to have me. Over the next 6 months, We performed a delicate dance of supervised visits. Amanda was respectful of my boundaries and Lily's comfort, never pushing for more than I was willing to give. But then, the atmosphere shifted. Amanda announced that she and Thomas were moving to our city, having bought a house just 20 minutes away to be a regular part of Lily's life. I invited them to dinner to get to know Thomas, but the evening felt rehearsed. Thomas was too perfect, his responses too polished, and he seemed to monitor Amanda's every word. The betrayal arrived with dessert. Amanda, bolstered by Thomas, announced that they wanted to legally be Lily's parents again. Thomas spoke smoothly about how Lily belonged with her mother and suggested she should move into their large house in a top-tier school district. I felt the air leave my lungs. I told them I had been her mother for 10 years while they were ghosts. Amanda countered by pointing out my small apartment and my 2 jobs, contrasting it with Thomas's 6-figure income and their suburban lifestyle. I stood my ground, telling them Lily already had the stability and security she needed with the only parent she had ever known. The situation turned toxic when my parents, who had barely checked on Lily for a decade, suddenly requested a Sunday dinner. When I arrived, Amanda and Thomas were already there, looking like they belonged. My parents dropped a second bombshell. They had been in contact with Amanda for 3 years, keeping her whereabouts a secret from me while she got herself together. My father looked me in the eye and said it was time for Lily to be with her real mother in a traditional family. My mother added that blood was blood. I realized then that they weren't just supporting Amanda, they were actively plotting against the life I had built. I walked out with Lily, but the damage was done. On the drive home, Lily asked in a small, terrified voice if she had to go live with Aunt Amanda and Uncle Thomas because Grandma said she should. I pulled the car over and made her cross her heart, promising her that we were a family and no one would take her away. But that night, I heard her crying out in her sleep, begging someone not to take her. A cold, hard determination settled in my chest. I would not lose her. 3 weeks later, the legal hammer fell. I received a certified letter stating that Amanda was petitioning for the restoration of her parental rights and full custody of Lily. I emptied my life savings and took out a loan to hire Julia Hernandez, a formidable family law attorney. Julia warned me that while biological parents have strong rights, 10 years of stable caregiving was on my side. We began the grueling process of documenting our entire lives, school records, medical history, and letters from neighbors. The discovery phase of the lawsuit revealed the depths of my family's treachery. My parents submitted sworn affidavits claiming I had manipulated the situation for years to alienate Lily from them. They portrayed me as a controlling villain and Amanda as a victim who deserved a second chance. Julia reassured me that we could refute these lies with my saved texts and emails, which documented their many canceled visits and general lack of interest. The stress began to destroy Lily's sense of security. Her grades slipped, and she began to suffer from separation anxiety. I hired a private investigator to dig into Amanda and Thomas's perfect life, and what he found changed the trajectory of the case. Thomas had a dismissed domestic violence charge from a previous relationship, and his business was actually failing. Most shockingly, the investigator discovered that Thomas had been searching for Lily's biological father, a man named Jason Reynolds who had recently inherited millions. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Amanda didn't want a daughter, she wanted a meal ticket. If she regained custody and established paternity, she could claim massive amounts of retroactive child support and control Lily's future inheritance. I compiled every bit of this evidence into a sealed folder. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courthouse felt like a tomb. Judge Harmon, a stern woman with silver hair, presided. Amanda gave a polished, tearful performance about her recovery and her longing to be a mother. Thomas followed, boasting about their house and financial stability. My parents then took the stand to twist the knife further, testifying that I was an unfit, stubborn woman who had stolen a child from her real family. When it was my turn, Amanda's high-priced attorney attacked my lifestyle. He questioned why I worked 2 jobs and lived in a modest apartment, trying to make my love seem inferior to their money. He asked if I had even bothered to date, implying I was a lonely, obsessed woman. I sat there, answering truthfully, while the weight of their lies pressed down on me. But I knew what was in the folder on the judge's desk, and I knew that the truth about their greed was the only thing that could save my daughter. The argument that square footage and vacation plans were more important than a decade of devotion began to crumble the moment my witnesses took the stand. Lily's teachers and the school counselor testified about the girl I had raised, describing a child who was thriving, confident, and deeply attached to the only mother she had ever known. Her current teacher looked the judge in the eye and stated that in 20 years of education, she had rarely seen a parent as attentive as me. The counselor added that tearing Lily away now would be a psychological catastrophe, potentially leading to depression and academic regression. The bond we shared was profound, and the court was finally seeing it for what it was. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't talk about bank accounts. I talked about 10 years of mothering. I spoke about the midnight fevers, the school projects, the skin knees, and the nightmares I had chased away. I told the judge that while I couldn't offer a mansion, I offered the unconditional love of the person who chose to stay every single day. I had kept the door open for Amanda, saving mementos and speaking of her with kindness despite her absence, because Lily deserved that grace. I concluded by saying that Lily was my child in every way that mattered. Then, Julia handed over the sealed folder. As Judge Harriman scanned the documents, the air in the room turned cold. She looked at Amanda and Thomas with visible concern and called the attorneys to her bench. When she turned back to the room, she dropped a truth that silenced everyone. The folder contained evidence that Thomas had been hunting for Lily's biological father specifically because the man had recently inherited millions of dollars. The sudden urge for motherhood was revealed as a calculated grab for child support and future inheritance. The judge didn't stop there. She confronted my parents, asking if they had knowingly lied under oath about not knowing Amanda's whereabouts for 3 years. My father tried to claim they were protecting her privacy, but the judge wasn't buying it. She warned them that perjury was a serious offense. Amanda's composure shattered when the judge asked if she knew Thomas was chasing an inheritance. Her silence and her husband's hardened expression told the court everything it needed to know. The perfect life they presented was a facade built on debt and greed. After a brief recess, Judge Harriman delivered a ruling that felt like the first breath of fresh air I'd taken in months. She stated that the petition for custody was motivated by financial gain rather than the child's well-being. She praised the stable, loving home I had provided and officially denied the change of custody. Lily was staying with me. The relief was so powerful I nearly collapsed. Amanda was granted only limited supervised visits, and my parents were sternly admonished for their dishonesty. Outside the courtroom, Amanda tried to apologize, claiming it just got complicated. I told her it didn't have to be. She could have just been honest about wanting to know her daughter. I didn't forgive her, but I walked away toward the sunlight. When I picked Lily up later that afternoon, she ran to me with terror in her eyes, asking what the judge had decided. I knelt down, took her hands, and told her she was staying with me forever. She sobbed with relief, reminding me that I had kept my cross-your-heart promise. That evening, we celebrated with pizza and ice cream. It was a simple meal, but it tasted like victory. In the weeks that followed, I had to set hard boundaries with my parents. I told them I couldn't trust them and that if they wanted to see Lily, it would be on my terms, under my supervision, with no more lies. They didn't like it, but they agreed because they knew they had no other choice. Lily continued her therapy, working through the confusion of having a birth mom who hadn't wanted her and a nana who had. She eventually realized that the person who chooses you every day is the one who truly earns the title of mother. Eventually, Amanda reached out again, this time without Thomas. She admitted I was a better mother than she could have ever been and thanked me for raising such a wonderful girl. She had left Thomas after his true motives were exposed and was finally focusing on her sobriety and a healthy, secondary role in Lily's life. We would never be the sisters we once were, but we found a way to coexist for Lily's sake. On Lily's 11th birthday, she gave me a card that I will keep for the rest of my life. Inside, she wrote, "To my mom who chose me every day for 11 years. Biology makes relatives, but love makes families. Thank you for being my real mom." Looking back at that rainy night 10 years ago, I realized that the most unexpected detours often lead to the most beautiful destinations. I didn't plan for my life to go this way, but I wouldn't trade a single moment of it. True family isn't defined by blood. It is forged in the fire of commitment and the choice to never walk away. To anyone facing an uphill battle for what they love, stay strong and stay true. Your heart knows the way, and your courage will see you through. Good luck.